All right, welcome back, Vendetta Sports Fantasy Show. Today is Monday. What's the date? Monday, October 5th, 2020. We're going over week 4 of the NFL season. Of course, I said I would do every Monday, but this past Monday, the site had a lot of issues to work through, so I didn't record an episode. But I will be doing each Monday throughout the NFL season to go over the Sunday games, what they mean for fantasy. Scott, who said he can't do Mondays, is here on Monday.
Yep.
So welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
All right, first game. Jacksonville Jaguars, Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals win 33-25. Jaguars side of things, DJ Chark with 2 touchdowns. Gardner Minshew, those were the only touchdowns he threw. James Robinson, 75 yards. Laviska Shenault had a decent day, 86 yards. What would your takeaway be for the Jaguars on Sunday?
For the Jaguars, it'd be, can we give Minshew some fucking credit? Because we were hammering the table, we were banging the table for this going into the season. Like, Minshew, give him credit because it's a crappy team. They're going to be behind a lot. He's going to be forced to throw, and he's going to produce like we saw.
Yeah, I think we kind of said that several times during the offseason that Minshew was being very undervalued in terms of fantasy. He was ranked 26, 27, 28 all off season. Didn't quite understand it. And this was a classic example of probably what's going to happen the rest of the year. Jacksonville's down. They're down some more and they're down some more. And eventually they just put up points because they're trying to catch up. Bengals side of things, they put up 33 points. However, Joe Burrow didn't have the biggest fantasy day. He did have 300 yards, but only 1 touchdown. It was basically the Joe Mixon show. 151, 2 scores. Real or not real, Joe Mixon?
I'm going with not real because this is the first time we've seen him do anything like this all year. And it's against the Jaguars. If your one big game is against the Jaguars, I don't really believe in your ability to produce in terms of fantasy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've never been a Joe Mixon believer, but I will say one thing. In terms of fantasy, there's 2 ways to be good: volume and talent. And Joe Mixon is going to get volume. So if he keeps getting opportunities, he should be okay. But don't expect weeks like this every single week, obviously. Yeah. The last thing I have on Cincinnati, AJ Green might be dead. 1 catch for 3 yards. T. Higgins had 77 yards. Tyler Boyd, 90 yards. Is it time for maybe AJ Green? We can just cut him. Is it that low?
Honestly, it's looking like it's getting to that point. Because, he's not even, outproducing Mike Thomas. Mike Thomas had more yards than him. Who the fuck is that guy? Look, AJ Green, phenomenal receiver in the past. All right, I will admit that as a Steelers fan. But now it's just, you can say it's injuries, you can say it's age, they all play a factor. And in the end, he's not going to produce anymore.
Yeah, there's one big stat out there right now. It is very damning. For quarterback wide receiver combos, AJ Green currently has the lowest passer rating right now in terms of targets. Nobody has a lower passer rating in the NFL than when Joe Burrow targets AJ Green. So probably time to panic. So the Cowboys, Dak Prescott threw for 500 yards. They put up 38 points and they lost because the Cleveland Browns went nuts. There's a lot in this game, so we'll go over it. For the Browns side of things, the Browns decided to score 49 points, and Mayfield had 165 yards passing. So the first order of business is, if the Browns are going to score like this, and Mayfield still, he did have 2 touchdowns, but if he's only giving you a $165 in blowout wins, what does this say about Mayfield's fantasy value?
I think this says that it doesn't matter what cast he has. Baker Mayfield is never going to be an elite fantasy quarterback. When the team scores 49 points, you would expect the quarterback to have contributed at least 300 yards and at least 3 to 4 touchdowns. That wasn't the case in any aspect for Baker Mayfield. Joe Burrow had more yards than him. And the Bengals barely won. Baker Mayfield's not going to be an elite fantasy quarterback. He doesn't have the threat. He doesn't have the ability to threaten people on the ground with his legs. And even in wins where he just completely blows out the competition, it's not even him doing most of the work.
Yeah, Cleveland had 300 yards rushing in this game. And at this point, the Browns are a run-first team, a run-second team, and a run-third team. They will hand the ball off constantly, which is where the storylines kind of lie here. Again, Cleveland 300 yards rushing, but Nick Chubb, after a 6-carry, 43-yard performance, got hurt in the middle of the game, will be placed on injured reserve. What's this mean for the Cleveland backfield?
This means that Kareem Hunt is going to be the guy. And we saw quite a lot of this towards the end of the game, but also D'Ernest Johnson.
Yeah.
He had 13 carries for 95 rushing yards.
Yeah, that guy.
This just speaks to Cleveland in that they're going to be running the ball all the time. And from the looks of it, they're not looking for a workhorse back. They're going to try to spread the love around, spread the workload around. And for Kareem Hunt, I don't know if it's necessarily going to affect his fantasy production in terms of what we've seen all year, because we've seen him split carries all year with Nick Chubb. So I don't think Kareem Hunt's really going to increase in value much at all if they keep feeding 2 running backs.
That's interesting. I would say that Kareem Hunt's value goes way up, but if they do involve D'Ernest Johnson, then maybe it won't. We'll see what happens, though. Last thing on the Browns is Odell Beckham back. 2 receiving touchdowns, a rushing touchdown. Personally, I think this was I play well against the Cowboys thing, and that even when I was with the Giants, I like to beat up on the Cowboys. Is this real or not real? Because I think it's kind of a fluke.
This is not real at all, because Odell caught 44 yards from Baker Mayfield. 37 receiving yards were from a throw from Jarvis Landry.
It was the best throw that was made by a Cleveland thrower all day.
Yeah. So outside of one trick play and one end around from midfield, Odell didn't have a good day.
When the game was over.
Yeah, when the game was done, he gets a reverse, takes it 50 yards to the house. This is just a case of beating the crap out of the Cowboys.
Cowboys side of things, I wrote this last week that Mike McCarthy, for whatever reason, does not want to make this a run-first football team. He wants to keep putting his bad defense on the field for as much time as possible. Cowboys are 35-15 when Zeke Elliott gets 15 carries, and he got 12 in this one. No surprise. Is it time to panic about not Zeke Elliott's talent, but the volume of carries for Zeke Elliott? 12 carries for 54 yards. It seems like Mike McCarthy wants to be a throw first, throw second, and throw third team.
I think it is time to panic because we forget the Cowboys were up at the end of the first quarter. They were up by 7 points at the end of the first quarter. That would be the prime time to start turning into a run team, to start handing it to Zeke first, second, and even third down. But they didn't. They had Dak throw 58 times. And you can obviously say that towards the end of the game, they're getting the crap kicked out of them. Of course, they're going to throw. But early in the game, that wasn't the case. Early in the game, you had the chance to run the ball, control the clock, and keep your defense off the field. Because with the Cowboys, their defensive line, it's a lot of pass rushers. It's a lot of good pass rushers, not great at stopping the run. So for that to work, you need to chew the clock and put Cleveland into panic mode saying, okay, it might be 8 minutes between possessions. We got to score now. And so you need to set up the run to be able to give your defense even a chance.
Yeah, I don't get Mike McCarthy. I don't understand why he's not running the ball. But if he's going to continue to play like this, and Dallas is going to be losing a lot of games, it seems like, with this defense, I think it's time to ask the question, how does Dak Prescott not finish as the number 1 quarterback for fantasy? Because they're down constantly, and the numbers this guy's putting up in garbage time while trailing are unbelievable. He's on pace to break the passing yard all-time record for a season. How does he not be QB1 at the end of the year?
I think it's just impossible at this point. He's going to keep throwing fucking 40, at least like 40, 50, 60 times a game. It's just impossible for him not to be finished as the number one fantasy quarterback.
With the weapons that he has as well.
Especially that, but also just from pure volume.
Right. CeeDee Lamb had a big game in this one. Let me pull this back up. My bad.
5 catches, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb, 2 touchdowns. Amari Cooper went for 134 and a touchdown. But I think more so the biggest story is Dalton Schultz, 72 yards and a score. Blake Jarwin was the guy that got a lot of hype. Is Dalton Schultz a tight end waiver wire claim that maybe we should think about picking up?
I think overall he would be a good claim, especially because this year we've been seeing players drop like flies. Like we've seen injuries left, right, center, all over the place. And if he can continue to put up numbers close to this, he's definitely worth a pickup, even just to stash him on your bench.
New Orleans Saints, Detroit Lions. Saints win 35-29. Pretty close game. Drew Brees had 2 touchdowns, 246 passing yards, 25 throwing attempts. So not the greatest day in the world, but it was kind of a Brees performance. I think the biggest storyline for me is Latavius Murray ended up getting 2 of the rushing touchdowns here. 14 carries overall, 64 yards. Kamara had a monster first 3 weeks of the year. Is it possible the Saints are saying, hey, we don't want to run this guy into the ground? Maybe Murray's going to be a bigger part of the offense moving forward.
The Saints offense, what it was in the first 3 weeks was throw it to Kamara, pray to God that he makes people miss and scores and fucking breaks away for 50 yards. That's also how it's going to be near the end of the year because Drew Brees isn't getting any younger. We've seen over the past few years, he plays all right in the early part of the season, but then in the playoffs, he can't throw it further than 5 yards. We're seeing him not being able to throw it further than 5 yards now. Imagine what it's going to look like in the playoffs. They need to keep Kamara fresh for the playoffs simply because he's their only way of producing offense. So it's definitely a case of the Saints they don't want to run Kamara to the ground. They don't want him to end up like Christian McCaffrey and get hurt. They don't want him to be injured. They want him for the playoffs if they even make the playoffs.
And last big storyline for the Saints, Tre'Quan Smith, 4 catches, 54 yards, but 2 touchdowns. I think the answer to this is no, but is there a chance he's a big part of the offense when Michael Thomas returns to action?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay, Detroit Lions. Stafford, 3 touchdowns. Typical Lions performance. Nothing we really learned there. Adrian Peterson continues to be the lead rusher for some God unknown reason. But, I mean, I didn't really learn a ton here. DeAndre Swift had a receiving touchdown. Maybe his role can grow. But do you have anything on the Lions here?
Not much. Not much from a fantasy perspective. Like, we know what Matthew Stafford will give you. He'll give you at least 200 yards, a few touchdowns, interception, because he just takes a lot of chances. There's no set running back right now. Like Adrian Peterson, you say let him in rushing, he only had 36 rushing yards. Like, we didn't really learn anything from this game. It was more just a case of the Lions being the Lions.
Seahawks, Dolphins. Seahawks win 31-23. Seattle side of things, Chris Carson was questionable coming into the week. He ended up playing very well, 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think one of the bigger storylines is David Moore, 3 catches, but 95 yards and a touchdown. Should Metcalf and Lockett owners be concerned that David Moore, he's going to get his targets and maybe he even steals a touchdown every couple weeks?
I wouldn't be, if you're a Metcalf owner, I wouldn't be that concerned because DK Metcalf's just a monster. Like, he's just an absolute monster. And he still had over 100 yards this week. And from that, Russell Wilson loves going to him. Big, fast, strong guy. You can stretch the perimeter. It's going to make a defense shit their pants when he's lining up outside. So I wouldn't worry if you're a Metcalf owner. For a Lockett owner, I wouldn't be too worried, but if David Moore is able to keep this up, and that's also the thing. Again, this is just a 1 week thing. We're not entirely sure if he's able to do this consistently, but I'd be more concerned if I was a Lockett owner, but I still wouldn't be that concerned.
I think Metcalf and Lockett owners should already be happy considering the amount of time Seattle is letting Russell Wilson throw the ball compared to last year. Dolphins side of things, I think there's a couple things here, actually. The biggest question to me is Fitzpatrick, 29-45, 315, but 2 picks, no passing touchdowns. If you're a Fitzpatrick fantasy owner, can you feel good about them starting him and not getting benched in the middle of the game? How many weeks does he have left? Because this is something that you kind of got to start to think about, especially with the bye weeks coming.
Well, Fitzpatrick was also the leading rusher for the Dolphins this week.
He was.
So Brian Fitzpatrick is just such a volatile player. Like, you almost have no idea what he's going to give you each week. Like, he could give you 2 interceptions. He could give you 3 touchdowns. He could get you 40-something rushing yards and a touchdown. He could get you no rushing yards. There's really not, like, I wouldn't own Fitzpatrick in fantasy simply because there's almost nothing that's stopping the Dolphins from just yanking him mid-game and putting Tua in. The only thing that's really worth watching that would help make this decision is the progress on Tua's health. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's going to come down to. And also just if there's any word out of the Dolphins that he's looking ready to start. Because if Tua's not ready, then the Dolphins aren't going to just thrust him in there blindly if Fitzpatrick struggles. Because the Dolphins didn't have any playoff hopes going into this year. It was a much improved roster, but I don't think you could realistically say they were going to make the playoffs. And so I think Fitzpatrick starts for at least the next 2 weeks. After that, it becomes questionable.
Yeah, as somebody that has Fitzpatrick and Tua, I've been nervous to start Fitzpatrick just because I don't know if he's going to get benched in the middle of a game. So I would say if you do have Fitzpatrick, find a way to have Tua or maybe try to sell him before he does get benched. Myles Gaskin, another week that he leads the team in rushing. 10 carries, 40 yards, not a big performance, but they were also down much of the game. Is Myles Gaskin somebody you would want in fantasy? Because it does feel like the Dolphins are at least competitive.
Well, in my case, I have him on my team for the site league. That's mainly because all my running backs have been just dropping like flies, so I needed to pick up someone. And Myles Gaskin, he's getting eased into the starting role, and he's getting more volume in terms of touches. The Dolphins are competitive. Like I said, they're not making the playoffs, but that doesn't mean they're just going to get blown out by 30 points every week. They're keeping games competitive. They only lost by 1 score to Seattle. And so if they can keep games close, Myles Gaskin can definitely become a very good running back for fantasy.
Yeah, he's a name that probably might be on your waiver wire, but you should probably think about picking him up because Jordan Howard's been brutal and Matt Breida is not good either. Chargers, Bucks win 38-31. Typical Chargers game. They had the game in the bag, and then they just started bleeding left and right and gave up 5 passing touchdowns to Tom Brady. But anyway, on the Chargers side of things, Justin Herbert looked pretty good. 20-25, 290, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Is Herbert someone that you would be willing to start? Maybe not in a 1-quarterback league. If maybe you have to start him if there's a bye week, but 2-quarterback league, Justin Herbert, feel good about starting him?
Based on what we've seen from the past few weeks with Herbert starting, I'd be fine with having to start him. Like if he's my quarterback too, I would have no issue with that. I would be completely fine with that because he's just been able to produce. And honestly, with the weapons he has around him, it's kind of hard for him not to produce unless he just absolutely stinks. So I'd take him as my quarterback too.
Yeah, he's looked pretty good, and it seems at least so far that he's willing to take shots down the field, which is a good sign. The biggest story, obviously, in this game, Austin Ekeler, bad hamstring or knee injury or whatever's going on with him. He's going to be placed on IR and going to miss a lot of time. What are the implications with this? Because this is a crushing blow.
I would say look for Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly to find a way to fill in the role of Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler was a phenomenal receiving back. I'm not sure if the Chargers will be able to find, pound for pound, 100% be able to replace that production. But they might be able to come close through a committee of the other running backs on their roster. From this, I'm not going to be taking a shot on another Chargers running back because I'm not sure who's the clear starter. I'm not sure who's going to be on the receiving end of screens, checkdowns. I just don't know yet.
I would be much more willing to take a shot on Josh Kelly because he was the guy that was playing with Ekeler. It didn't seem like they were really using Justin Jackson. Josh Kelly had a couple touchdowns this year too. So I'd be more willing to take a shot on him, but Jackson could be a pass-catching guy to keep an eye on now that Eckler's out. Tom Brady, he goes for 5 touchdowns, 369. Scott, as a anti-Tom Brady person, and I'll get to myself later, but how does this make you feel about his performance?
I feel like it's just a flash in the pan. This is not going to be sustainable for Brady for very long. Yes, Mike Evans had a great day. My boy Scotty Miller, he had a good day. But I don't see Tom Brady being able to keep this up consistently. It was a rocky start to the season, and this team was the team that needed training camp and preseason. If you told me to pick a team that needed it the most, it would have to be the Buccaneers because you're trying to mesh two philosophies that just don't work together. You're trying to mesh the Tom Brady from New England, which takes all the short routes, takes what's there. Then you have Bruce Arians, who's like, fuck it, going deep. And so you're trying to mesh these two philosophies that are polar opposites. And it seems like they're starting to figure it out a bit. But it's also, this was against the Chargers, and the Chargers always find a way to lose games. The Buccaneers scored 24 second half points. And so I don't think Brady's going to be able to do this consistently. There's going to come a time where he just doesn't have the arm strength anymore. And we started to see that early in the season. Now, of course, you can turn it back once, twice, maybe 3 times in a 16-game season. But you're not going to be able to go back to the Brady of old from even 5 to 7 years ago.
And here's the problem I have with the Tom Brady thing. Because he had a 5 touchdown performance. It's great. It's against a really hurt Chargers defense. No Derwin James, Melvin Ingram. They've got a bunch of injuries going on. But my point here is, okay, Tom Brady had 5 touchdowns. If I told you that Tom Brady would throw 5 touchdowns and actually play decent over the first 4 weeks, but based on what you know about Carson Wentz, he'd only have 7 more fantasy points than Carson Wentz this year, who's been pretty much awful for a lot of weeks. What would you say?
I'd say that's fucking nuts, but that's bullshit. But that's probably what happened.
Because that's exactly what's happened right now. The chances that Brady throws for 5 touchdowns again are very, very slim. And at his peak performance right now, on the season, he's only 7 points higher than Carson Wentz. On the season, he's 10 fantasy points total on the year than Ryan Fitzpatrick. So you can like Brady's performance and the 5 touchdowns and all that's great.
You can like it for 1 week.
The problem is we're going to get to week 12 and it's going to start to get cold because this is what has happened to Drew Brees the past 3 years. And this is what has happened last year to Tom Brady when he lost to Fitzpatrick and was terrible in the playoff game and then was terrible against Houston and bad against Kansas City. We get to the cold weather weeks. You're not getting 5 touchdowns. You might not get 2. So just saying. Mike Evans, by the way, has
like hearing that.
Mike Evans has been a godsend. Mike Evans, every single week, just catching 1-yard touchdowns, 2-yard touchdowns. Mike Evans has been on fire. He is the Gronk of this offense.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing on this game, Ronald Jones, who I took a lot of heat for. I was pro Ronald Jones. Very pro Ronald Jones. 111 yards, 20 carries. Pretty good. Pretty good, Scott.
It is pretty good.
Ravens.
Also, one thing I'll say,
go ahead.
It was against the Chargers. Like, take all of this with a grain of salt. It was against the Chargers. That's all I'm going to say.
Ravens against the football team. Ravens win 31-17. For Baltimore, didn't learn a ton here. Typical Lamar Jackson performance. Baltimore blows him out, but doesn't have 200 passing yards. Had a long rushing touchdown, though. I guess the more concerning part here for Baltimore is Gus Edwards, 9 carries, Mark Ingram, 8 carries, J.K. Dobbins, 5 carries. Is this something that will continue for the rest of the year, or are we getting a 3-headed monster all year?
I feel we could be getting a 3-headed monster all year because we saw last year what happens when Mark Ingram went down for the Ravens. Like, they couldn't do shit in the playoffs without Mark Ingram. So I can feel this is a way to keep everyone fresh, to make sure everyone's ready for the playoffs. Because, if Lamar Jackson gets, tossed out of the playoffs in the first round again, there's going to be some question marks about, is he going to be the guy moving forward? To which I know what your answer would be to those questions. But I feel it's a concerted effort right now in an attempt to keep the entire team healthy. And one thing I'm going to say, Lamar Jackson had 53 rushing yards, but he had one run. Didn't he have one 50-yard touchdown run at one point in the game?
Yeah, that was basically one of his carries was the bulk of his rushing work.
Yeah, so it was one carry gave him the bulk of his rushing, and then he had 3 yards outside of that.
I guess my hope is, as a J.K. Dobbins fantasy owner, that he's a rookie. They're working him into the offense. By the end of the year, he's the guy, but I just don't know if that's the case.
Yeah.
Washington side of things, Dwayne Haskins actually had a decent day, 314 passing yards, no touchdowns, though. He did have a rushing score. The storyline here, Antonio Gibson, now he wasn't efficient. 13 carries, 46 yards. That doesn't really blow you away. But he did have a touchdown, and he did have 82 receiving yards. Is it time to take Antonio Gibson seriously for fantasy?
When a player has this type of performance, I would take him seriously as a receiving threat. Because 4 catches, 82 yards, that's being very efficient, very productive as a receiver. But I feel you need to average at least 4 yards per carry to be taken seriously as a running back. Because 3.5 yards per carry, that's what the offensive line can get you. That's what, if you plug in most average running backs, that's what they'll get you. When you're getting up to 4 or 5 yards a carry, that's when you begin to separate yourself. And that's when you begin to show that you actually are somewhat valuable. And so ultimately, I wouldn't take him too seriously. If he's able to keep up this type of receiving production, I will.
Yeah, I think he's okay. On the season, he's averaging 4.2 yards a carry. But, I just think the hype's a little crazy. This is not somebody I'm willing to throw into the lineup or will want to throw into the lineup every single week. To me, he's a spot starter. He's going to give you some receiving work, but to count on a touchdown coming from him every week seems fishy. I don't know if he gets more than 10 carries every single week, so maybe he's a good flex. We'll see. Cardinals, Panthers. Panthers win 31-21. Kyler Murray did have 3 touchdowns, but didn't throw for a ton of yards and kept adding rushing potential. The only real storyline here is Kenyon Drake. I think I'm ready to take the L on this one. I like Drake coming into the year, but 13 for 35, and he really hasn't been good all year. Is it time to panic about Kenyon Drake, or would you maybe buy low if you don't have him?
If I'm very desperate for a running back, then I would buy low. But if I'm set, like if I'm good with my lineup, I don't need to do any roster moves. And by buy low, I mean buy for damn near nothing. Like I will take him for free if that's the case. Well, if I have him, it's absolutely time to panic because he just hasn't been able to produce. 2.7 yards per carry last week. He just hasn't been able to produce. Like Kyler Murray had a much better rushing week than him this year, and he's the quarterback. Now, Kyler Murray is a very special athlete, but as a running back, that's just embarrassing to have your rushing numbers doubled by a quarterback in a game.
Yeah, Drake's been bad all year, so I'm kind of ready to hit the panic button because I have him in our league. But someone I thought was going to be good this year, but really Murray has taken a lot of the rushing, and Chase Edmonds doesn't seem to be going away. Panthers side of things, if you had Christian McCaffrey and you didn't pick up Mike Davis, shame on you, because this is another week that Mike Davis has a touchdown, 84 yards, 16 carries, and he also added 27 in the passing game. Mike Davis, pretty good, not bad, filling in the role.
Absolutely. Like, I will understand that Christian McCaffrey is a great receiver. Well, Mike Davis has been able to fill in from the rushing standpoint, and it seems like they haven't missed a beat. And also Reggie Bonifant. Although he didn't have a touchdown, 10 carries, 53 yards, the Panthers are finding a way to replace the rushing production from losing Christian McCaffrey.
I wouldn't say they haven't missed a beat. They've missed a little bit of a beat.
They haven't missed it. I'm not saying they haven't missed a beat. I'm saying it's close to that in the sense that they're able to replace the production. It's taking multiple people, but they're finding a way to replace the production, and they're winning games.
More so in the rushing game, not as much in the passing game.
Well, that's what I said in the rushing game.
Receiving wise, Robby Anderson continues to be the lead dog here, 99 yards. A lot of people picked DJ Moore pretty high this year. And I've been someone that have kind of laughed at the DJ Moore stuff because I thought Calvin Ridley was a guy who was much better, was taken in the same draft and wasn't drafted or was drafted behind DJ Moore in the draft. DJ Moore, less receiving yards than Robby Anderson pretty much every single week this year. What do we make of that?
Not the case of a player playing great as soon as they get the hell away from Adam Gase.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's pretty much all there is to it. Like, Robby Anderson is a great deep threat, great receiver. And given the chance in Carolina, he's been able to produce. He's been the top guy. And we talked about this on a few other shows a month ago, how we didn't really know where the DJ Moore hype was coming from or why exactly it was a thing. And this is the case of a Panthers team where going into the season, they didn't have, that one guy who is just leaps and bounds above everybody else. Like, they didn't have like a Julio Jones or a Michael Thomas on their team. They have a bunch of good, solid players, and whoever produces, they produce. Who's ever open, they get the ball.
I tried to make an offer for DJ Moore in my league. The guy who had Chris Carson, because he was hurt, I offered him Carlos Hyde and Mike Williams. Obviously, not a great deal. But if you're someone that has DJ Moore, what would it take to get rid of him? Because he's really not been good this year, but he came in with a lot of hype, and maybe it's time to cut bait before the rest of the league realizes that maybe he's not going to perform like the hype.
Well, if you're in an auction league, if you're able to get a receiver that has similar production just for a fraction of the cost, like if you went for $10 and you're able to get a receiver for around like $3 to $7, who's about the same production, I would take that trade because you're getting the same production just for less money. And if you're doing your snake draft leagues, I would honestly see how far you're able to convince someone. If you're able to just push the hype and try to get a really good wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 1, I'd do that. If you're in need of, I honestly see him as trade bait at this point. Like, if you're in need of a tight end, use DJ Moore in the negotiations. Try to build up the hype.
Vikings, Texans. Vikings win 31-23. Houston, 0-4, and Bill O'Brien traded all their picks. Not great. But in this one, not a ton here on the Vikings side of things, besides the point where I don't know if we had this official bet or not, Scott, but
we never put any wager on it.
Dalvin Cook is the best running back in football right now. I don't think it's arguable. In this game, Dalvin Cook goes for 27 carries, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He has been a wrecking ball all season. He's got 6 touchdowns on the year, averaging 5.7 yards a carry on the year. He also leads the NFL in broken tackles. He leads the NFL in yards after contact. I just want to give you the chance to say, hey, this Dalvin Cook guy, I'm not sure if you heard of him, but he's pretty good.
I will say that he is definitely playing pretty good. In the first 2 weeks, he had 12 and 14 carries, so you didn't see the rushing production in terms of yards from him. But his touchdown numbers remained largely unchanged. Like week 1 and week 2. Week 1, he had 2 rushing touchdowns. Week 2, he had 1. Week 3 and 4. Week 3, he had a touchdown on the ground. Week 4, he had 2. He's just going to find a way to find the end zone. When you give him more carries, of course, he's going to get more yards. I feel that his rushing average for the year might be a bit inflated from the Titans game where he averaged 8.2 yards a carry. Outside of that, it's 4.2, 4.5, 4.8. He's been consistent. So I will admit, he's pretty good. Hasn't really been there on the receiving end, but the rushing end, he's been there.
Last thing on the Vikings, might be your last chance to buy low, or shouldn't even say buy low, but your last chance to trade for Justin Jefferson. This is the second consecutive week he goes for over 100 yards. He's starting to live up to that first round status here. Justin Jefferson, he's going to be a hot topic because he keeps doing this. He's a guy you can throw into your lineups. Is this someone you'd be interested in inquiring? What would you be willing to give up for him? Because this is a player that is going to get a lot of attention.
He's definitely someone I'd be interested in getting because we've talked about this before in other shows. When it comes to rookie receivers, you really see the growing pains in the early weeks when they're still learning the systems, they're still trying to figure stuff out, and then they usually begin to put it together towards the end of the season. With Justin Jefferson, we're seeing him begin to put it together now. And so when it comes to trading for him, I'm not going to sell the fucking house for him because that's just insane. You're not going to sell the house for any one player that isn't a running back in fantasy football because running backs are the most valuable position in fantasy football. Justin Jefferson, I'm not entirely sure what I would give up for him because the dynamic's different in different leagues. Like if it's in an auction league and he's for cheap, then I would have no issue giving up a receiver like an Adam Thielen who might be $15, $20 more than him. Because in an auction league, it's about balancing the salary cap and the price. In a stake draft league, that's where it gets kind of uncertain because you don't really know. It's hard to consider what's a quote-unquote fair trade because there's no salary cap attached to it. So I'm just not going to go into snake drafts.
Houston side of things, David Johnson had a typical 60-yard performance. He's going to be blah all year. Will Fuller had 100 yards and a touchdown. We kind of know who's getting the targets here. If it's not Will Fuller, it's nobody. And Brandon Cooks just went for 0 yards this week. Yippee. So not a ton there, unless you have anything to add.
No, there's really nothing to add there.
New York Giants, LA Rams. Rams win 17-9. The Giants are brutal. Daniel Jones, $190, no touchdowns and a pick. Blech. But he did have 45 yards on the ground. Still not a great fantasy day. Wayne Gallman, 45 yards. Devonta Freeman, 33 yards. Deion Lewis, 10 yards. I don't think the backfield's useful either. Is it?
No. And for anyone thinking that Devonta Freeman's going to pick up for Saquon Barkley and be this top 5 guy,
3 yards a carry, yeah.
With all due respect, you're a fucking idiot. That's all I have to say.
No disagreements there. Daniel Jones, though, real quick, because the bye weeks are coming, but he's been bad. He's been bad. And Daniel Jones had a couple good fantasy weeks last year, but this was someone that I had pegged as my wild card coming into the year. I thought he was overhyped, but it was an offense that, they have Darius Slayton. They have Evan Ingram. They have Golden Tate. They're okay weapons. They're going to be losing a lot, but Jones hasn't delivered those comeback performances. He's just been bad.
Oh, he's just been fucking brutal to watch. Like, I just don't watch Giants games anymore because Daniel Jones last year, we talked about him having turnover problems. That's continuing into this year, especially especially in terms of interceptions.
The problem is he's having turnover problems, but not scoring.
Yeah. Like Jameis Winston, he'd throw picks, but he'd throw 30 picks. He'd throw 30 touchdowns. Like, it balanced itself out. Like, Daniel Jones, you're not getting any balance. He has 2 touchdowns total on the year, 5 interceptions, and a fumble. Like, we talk about Carson Wentz sucking and being terrible. He has more touchdowns. At least Carson Wentz is even in terms of touchdowns and interceptions. 7 total touchdowns, 7 interceptions. At least he's even. Daniel Jones isn't even.
Yeah, a bit of a weak Rams performance here. Jared Goff, 200 yards and a touchdown. 1 big throw to Cooper Kupp. Outside of that, Malcolm Brown, 37 yards. Darrell Henderson, 22 yards. They really struggled to score here on a bad Giants defense.
Yeah, which is kind of concerning.
Colts, Bears. Colts win 19-11, and it was really never even close. It was kind of a last-second touchdown to Allen Robinson. There's a lot on the Colts, not much on the Bears. For the Bears side of things, Foles was kind of brutal, and David Montgomery gave you nothing on the ground again. But on the Colts side of things, the Colts continue to play good defense and get leads. They're 3-1 now. Is Phillip Rivers ever going to be useful? Because this is another week. He hasn't gotten you 20 fantasy points. It hasn't happened once all year. Rivers, $190 and a touchdown. Can you even use him? Even in a 2-quarterback league. He's almost the worst starting quarterback to have.
I mean, you can use him if, like, your top quarterback's hurt.
I think he's completely washed. I don't think you can use him.
Aside, like, unless you're just facing injuries out the fucking wazoo, then you just can't use him. Like, he's going to win the Colts games by virtue of they're going to get a lead and it's going to turn to, hey, Phil, don't do shit. Like, he's never going to be in a position where he's going to be throwing 40 times a game. He's never going to be throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, those days are done.
On the ground sort of thing, I want to bring this up too, because I believe this is a storyline that's important. I've been trying to explain that Jonathan Taylor is overhyped. He is not worth the draft costs. And even after the Marlon Mack injury, it doesn't change a whole lot. This guy is just simply not that good. Another week, 17 carries, 68 yards. Do you have anything? Do you disagree with me? Because the Jonathan Taylor hype as this top 10 running back is getting a little outrageous.
I do not disagree with you at all. We'll just leave it at that.
Nyheim Hines had 9 carries. Jordan Wilkins had 9 carries. The problem is even if Taylor is good,
he's not getting the volume.
He's not getting the volume. He had 17 carries in a game that was never close, and the other two guys were getting carries too, which is a problem. Next game, Bills 30, Raiders 23. The Raiders continue to shoot themselves in the foot for fumbles, but Derek Carr's been pretty good. He's got an 8-0 touchdown to interception ratio, 311 passing yards in this one. Is Carr a sneaky fantasy quarterback option this year? He's played well.
He's been playing very well. And I've been hearing no one say, I haven't even heard Alex, bang the table saying, hey, Carr's playing good. I didn't even hear the certified Raiders fan saying that.
It's been a quiet good year.
It really has been. It hasn't been this on pace for 50 touchdowns. It's been he's doing good. He's getting 2 touchdowns a game. He's not turning the ball over. He's been sneaky good.
Last thing I have on the Raiders here, Josh Jacobs, 15 carries, 48 yards, not a great week. Is Josh Jacobs, maybe just a bad week? Is he a little overhyped, or is the Bills defense really good?
I'd probably credit the Bills defense more than I would absolutely crap on Josh Jacobs.
I'm with
you.
But
at the same time, the Bills defense definitely deserves some credit because in terms of coaching, they're great coaches for the defense. Josh Allen is putting it together.
Speaking of Josh Allen, another 2 touchdown week. He adds a quarterback sneak as well. We give him 3. The man that everybody seemed to hate on draft day. Everybody said the Bills fucked up. The Bills don't know what they're doing. This guy from Wyoming's not going to make it. What do you know? Josh Allen's pretty much the best fantasy quarterback you can have. Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. Allen is in that top 5 right now.
Absolutely. I'm very happy that I got him for, what did I get him for? Less than what Alex paid for Drew Lock. I'll tell you that right now.
That's you could.
I know.
You could list anybody.
You
could have listed prime Peyton Manning and Drew Lock would have went higher.
Especially with Alex.
Last game, the Sunday night game. Eagles, 49ers. Eagles found a way to win. By the way, Chad owes me an apology. I said the Eagles would win this game. Chad, if you're watching. 25-20, Eagles win. Carson Wentz, he doesn't have a ton of help, but I actually thought he looked really good. Big passing touchdown to Travis Fulgham, whoever that is.
Who the fuck is that guy?
And he had a rushing touchdown. I think this is kind of what you're going to get out of Wentz. He's not going to, kill you with the stat line because Greg Ward's out there and, Zach Ertz is getting doubled, who I kind of want to talk about too. Is this kind of what we should expect from Wentz?
Yeah, I feel this is definitely what we should expect from Wentz. Because
that offensive line, it's brutal.
That offense is not looking good at all from a personnel standpoint. And is it crazy to say that, Frank Wright might have been the guy really behind Wentz's great year in 2017?
Somebody listens to the lead word.
Exactly. Gotta listen to it. Definitely fair to say that. And also with Carson Wentz and that rushing touchdown early in the game, I feel like we need to throw out the narrative of Carson Wentz has to play safe so he doesn't get hurt. And I'm working on a post on this, but Wentz needs to use his legs this year to win. It's use your legs because your arm is broken because he's already at 7 interceptions on the year.
I don't think the pick last night was his fault, though.
No, it's not. No, I'm not putting all the blame on him for that.
That one last night, it was kind of like a tipped.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of like a freak fluke thing. But for the other 3 games, he hasn't been great at all. He's been shooting himself in the foot. But I'm not even going to put all the blame on him because that offensive line could not protect him against the football team. That offensive line has been turning to crap with all of the injuries, and that offense as a whole has just been devastated by injuries. And it's starting to get to the point where we might have to start just expecting this from the Eagles. And Carson Wentz, he's going to find a way to win. And I feel he needs to rely on his legs a lot more this year.
Few more things on the Eagles. Greg Ward, only 38 yards, but kind of their lead guy, led the team with receptions. And targets. Is Greg Ward someone you would be willing to roster in fantasy? Because I would actually say yes.
Roster, yes. Start, not really.
Zach Ertz, 4 receptions, 9 yards. He's really not been good pretty much all year. He's got 19 receptions for 130 yards and 1 touchdown. This is someone you obviously had to pay up for. Not a lot of great tight ends out there. He's probably the 3rd or 4th ranked tight end before the year. Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert is now hurt. So Zach Ertz, not great. Not great at all. What would you do there?
If you don't have any other options, first off, look for another option. Like, I think your boy Mo Alley Cox had better production this week.
Hey, he's good.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Your guy, Mo Alley Cox, who the fuck is that guy, had a better week than Zach Ertz.
Not just this week. It's been 3 consecutive weeks he's had a better week.
Your guy, Mo Alley Cox, has been better than Zach Ertz. So there you go. You can take all the credit for that. You can do what you want with that. When it comes to Zach Ertz, because I hear there have been I've heard like there have been reports how, the tight end market is just getting blown up and Zach Ertz wants a raise. And it gets to the point where he might not be worth that raise right now. Because I don't think it's crazy to say that Dallas Goedert is around the same level, if not better for fantasy than Zach Ertz when they're both on the field.
I think the problem right now is he's getting double and triple teamed because they have nobody else. But if you have Ertz, you almost kind of got to ride with it because, what are you going to do? Pick up freaking Jack Doyle? Like, tight end is a spot where it's really, really thin. So
it's few and far between.
If you have Ertz, you're kind of screwed. Yeah. You just got to kind of ride with it.
You just got to ride with it and hope for the best.
49ers side of things, I've been told this Nick Mullens guy is really good. Not so much. Pick 6, another interception, got benched for C.J. Beathard, who can't throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. Looks like Garoppolo should be back next week, so that's taken care of. Jerick McKinnon, 14 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Also had 43 receiving yards. Now, it looks like Mostert should be back either this week or next week, but has McKinnon earned a spot in the offense regardless? Because I think he's looked pretty good.
I feel he has earned a bit of a spot in the offense. I don't think he's going to end up being the number 1 guy, but he's going to be getting his touches. He's going to be getting his rotation. He's going to be getting some form of carries. And one thing I'll say about that Nick Mullens pick 6, that guy was in the CFL. The linebacker he threw it to was in the CFL from like 2016 to 2018. So, and I watched the throw. He must have just seen directly through the linebacker because that went right to him. So all of this Nick Mullens is, there's a quarterback controversy. No, there isn't. The 49ers would have won that game with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
I don't think you can convince me or Trey otherwise. And at the end of the day, the 49ers are going to need Jimmy Garoppolo to come back soon because Kyle Shanahan can only do so much when his quarterbacks stink.
Last interesting point here on San Francisco. Brandon Aiyuk had a crazy run, hurdled a guy, but he didn't do a ton in the passing game, 18 yards. And additionally, Deebo Samuel, he was only out there every 3rd or 4th play. Kyle Shanahan said he was kind of easing him back in the offense. I think he only played about 20 snaps the whole game. So as Samuel starts to come back into the offense, is Aiyuk going to be usable?
Not really. Because with how Kyle Shanahan likes to use his receivers, he likes to use them in a multitude of ways. But there's only room for one guy to be used as this gadget player. Like, I'm sure if Deebo Samuel was healthy, he would have been the one taking that lateral that Brandon Aiyuk took. Like, he would have been there to take that snap. He would have been there to take that play. And so I feel Aiyuk can definitely, in the next couple of weeks, while Deebo Samuel's being eased back in, he can make a case for why he should play more, but he's not going to be able to get the production that you were looking for.
Yeah, I would just say that if you are someone that has Deebo Samuel, don't panic. He kind of barely played. He wasn't out there much. Kendrick Bourne was the other starter. So I think much better days ahead for him. He did have 4 points, though. So that's going to do it.
We got one more thing. Tweet from Shefty just now. Austin Ekeler is expected to be sidelined 4 to 6 weeks. Hamstring injury and a hyperextended knee.
There you go. So probably 6 weeks. But either way, Eckler's not good. Any other closing thoughts here?
Check out the other shit we got on YouTube. Check out the store. That's really about it.
Yeah. Vendetta University. There will be a little bit of an update coming with that.
Yeah, Jackson's going to be bringing that update.
But big time views with that one.
Oh, so, yeah.
Exciting stuff with that, as always. Again, make sure to follow Scott S. Logush52 on Twitter. Myself, Trey Daubert. Again, I will be doing Mondays. We'll see if the other...
Don't expect me regularly on Mondays. All right, I'm just going to say that right now.
We'll see if the other people step up and do other shows during the week. But I will do Mondays. Check us out, media_vendetta on Twitter. And subscribe on YouTube. Myself, Trey Daubert. I think that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'll do it.
We'll see you guys next week.